Elena's heart stopped the moment Sophie's voice cut through the phone line, sharp as a blade. God, Elena, why are you so obsessed with this? You're acting too lesbian about it. The words burned, not just for their cruelty, but because they came from the one person Elena trusted with her soul. Rain battered the windows of her Seattle apartment, mirroring the storm now raging in her chest. It had been 6 months since Sophie borrowed $5,000, her eyes brimming with tears as she swore it was to save her mother from medical debt. Elena hadn't hesitated to empty her savings, driven by a love she hadn't yet dared to name. But now, with Sophie dodging her calls and that venomous phrase echoing in her mind, Elena wondered if their decade-long friendship and the fragile hope of something more had been a lie. She sank onto her couch, clutching the phone, her hazel eyes tracing the framed photo on the coffee table. Her and Sophie at Pike Place Market, laughing under a shared umbrella, their shoulders brushing in a way that felt like a promise. They'd met in college, two misfits bonding over late-night study sessions and a shared love for indie music. Sophie, with her camera always in hand, had a way of seeing the world that made Elena feel alive, seen in a way no one else ever had. Elena, quieter, steadier, poured her heart into her art, designing posters for local bands while dreaming of a life where she could be brave enough to tell Sophie how she felt. But Sophie had always been a whirlwind, charming, unpredictable, and just out of reach. She'd flit between relationships, never settling, always leaving Elena to wonder if the lingering glances and late-night confessions meant anything. When Sophie came to her, desperate, claiming her mother needed surgery, Elena saw a chance to prove her devotion. She handed over the money without a second thought, trusting Sophie's tearful gratitude. Now, the silence between them was deafening. Elena had asked for the money back not because she needed it, though her bank account was painfully low, but because Sophie's evasiveness had started to feel like betrayal. Each unanswered text, each vague excuse, chipped away at Elena's trust. And then last night, that call. Too lesbian. The words weren't just an insult. They weaponized the truth Elena had buried for years. She stood, pacing the small apartment, her bare feet cold against the hardwood. Outside, Seattle's gray skyline loomed, a perfect backdrop for her unraveling thoughts. Had Sophie known all along? Had she seen the way Elena's breath hitched when their hands brushed, the way her cheeks flushed at Sophie's teasing smiles? Elena had never said the words aloud, but her heart had screamed them every day. The doorbell buzzed, sharp and insistent. Elena froze, her pulse racing. She wasn't expecting anyone, and Sophie hadn't shown up unannounced in months. She crossed to the door, her hand trembling as she turned the knob. There stood Sophie, rain-soaked, her leather jacket glistening, her dark eyes unreadable. "Elena," Sophie said, her voice softer than it had been on the phone, but there was an edge to it, like she was holding something back. "Can we talk?" Elena's throat tightened. She wanted to slam the door, to scream, to demand answers. But the sight of Sophie, her best friend, her unspoken love, rooted her to the spot. "Why are you here?" she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Sophie stepped closer, the scent of rain and her familiar citrus perfume filling the space between them. "I messed up," she said, her eyes searching Elena's. "But it's not what you think." Elena's heart thudded, torn between hope and dread. She stepped aside, letting Sophie in, knowing this moment could either mend her heart or shatter it completely. The rain didn't let up as Sophie stood in Elena's living room, dripping onto the rug. Elena closed the door, her mind racing. She wanted to believe Sophie's presence meant something, an apology, an explanation, maybe even a confession. But the sting of too lesbian lingered, a wound too fresh to ignore. "Start talking," Elena said, crossing her arms. Her voice was steadier than she felt. Sophie ran a hand through her wet hair, her usual confidence faltering. "I didn't mean what I said last night. It was a cheap shot. I was angry and I lashed out." "Angry about what?" Elena's voice rose. "I gave you everything I had, Sophie. You said it was for your mom. I trusted you." Sophie's eyes dropped to the floor. It was for her. At least it started that way. She hesitated, then met Elena's gaze. But things got complicated. Complicated how? Elena stepped closer, her frustration boiling over. "You've been dodging me for months. You owe me $5,000, and now you're throwing my feelings in my face like they're some kind of joke." Sophie flinched, and for a moment, Elena saw a flicker of guilt in her eyes. It's not about your feelings, Sophie said, her voice low. It's about mine. The words hung in the air, heavy and ambiguous. Elena's breath caught, her mind spiraling. Was Sophie saying what she thought she was? Or was this another deflection, another way to keep her at arm's length? Explain, Elena demanded, her voice trembling now. Because I'm done guessing. Sophie took a shaky breath. The money. It was for my mom's hospital bills at first, but then she got worse and too panicked. I used some of it to cover my own debts. I didn't want to tell you because I was ashamed. Elena's chest tightened. You lied to me. I didn't lie, Sophie said quickly. I just didn't tell you everything. I thought I could fix it before you noticed. But then you kept asking and I got defensive, and she cut herself off, her eyes glistening. I didn't mean to hurt you, Elena. I swear. Elena wanted to believe her, but the betrayal cut deep. And the too lesbian comment? Was that just you being defensive too? Sophie's face crumpled, and for the first time, Elena saw her unravel. No, she whispered. That was me being a coward. Elena's heart pounded. She didn't know what to say, how to navigate this tangle of anger and longing. Sophie took a step closer, her voice barely audible. I've known how you feel about me for a long time, Elena. And I feel it too. But I'm terrified. The confession hit Elena like a tidal wave. She dreamed of this moment, but not like this, not laced with lies and pain. She wanted to reach out to pull Sophie close, but her feet wouldn't move. You can't just say that, she said, her voice breaking. Not after everything. I know, Sophie said, her voice thick with emotion. But I'm here now and I'm trying to make it right. Please, Elena. Give me a chance. Elena stared at her, torn between the love she'd carried for years and the trust that had been shattered. The rain outside seemed to echo her indecision, a relentless rhythm that offered no answers. Elena's apartment felt smaller with Sophie standing in it, her presence both familiar and foreign. The air was thick with unspoken words, the kind that could either heal or destroy. Elena's heart waged a silent war. Part of her wanted to forgive, to fall into Sophie's arms, but another part screamed for her to protect herself. You're terrified? Elena said, her voice sharp despite the ache in her chest. You think I'm not? I gave you everything, Sophie. Not just the money, me trust, my heart. And you threw it back in my face. Sophie's eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. I know I messed up. I should have told you the truth from the start. But I was drowning, Elena. My mom's bills kept coming, and I was already behind on my own. I thought I could handle it. Elena shook her head, pacing to the window. The rain blurred the city lights, turning Seattle into a watercolor painting of grays and golds. You could have told me. We've always been honest with each other. Or at least I thought we were. Sophie stepped closer, her boots leaving faint wet prints on the floor. I wanted to, but every time I tried, I saw how much you believed in me. I didn't want to let you down. Elena turned, her hazel eyes blazing. You let me down when you lied. When you called me too lesbian for caring. The words tasted bitter, but saying them aloud gave her a strange sense of power. Sophie's face twisted with regret. That was the worst thing I've ever said. I didn't mean it, not the way it sounded. I was just scared of how much I need you. Elena's breath hitched. Need. The word felt like a lifeline and a trap all at once. What does that even mean, Sophie? Sophie took a tentative step forward, her voice low and raw. It means I've been running from us for years. Every time I got close to admitting how I feel, I pulled back. What if I ruin it? What if I ruin you? Elena's heart pounded, her anger warring with the pull of Sophie's words. She'd spent so long hiding her feelings, convincing herself they were one-sided. Now Sophie was peeling back layers Elena hadn't dared to touch. Say it, Elena said, her voice trembling. If you're going to stand here and turn my world upside down, at least say it clearly. Sophie swallowed, her dark eyes locked on Elena's. I love you, Elena. Not just as a friend. I've loved you for years, and it scares the hell out of me because I don't know how to do this without breaking everything. The confession hung between them, fragile and electric. Elena's knees felt weak, but she held her ground, searching Sophie's face for any hint of deception. All she saw was raw vulnerability, the kind Sophie rarely showed anyone. Then why push me away? Elena asked, her voice softer now, almost pleading. Why hurt me like that? Sophie's hands clenched into fists, then relaxed. Because I'm an idiot. Because I thought if I kept you at a distance I wouldn't have to face how much I want you. But when you asked for the money back it felt like you were pulling away from me. And I panicked. Elena's mind reeled. She wanted to believe Sophie, to let this moment erase the pain. But trust wasn't so easily rebuilt. You can't just say you love me and expect everything to be okay, she said. You broke something, Sophie. And I don't know if I can fix it. Sophie's face fell, but she nodded. I know. But I'm here, and I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Starting with the money. She reached into her jacket, pulling out an envelope. This is $2,000. It's all I have right now, but I'll get you the rest. I promise. Elena stared at the envelope, her emotions a tangled mess. The money was a start, but it wasn't just about the cash, it was about the lies, the betrayal, the way Sophie had used her feelings against her. I don't want your money right now, Elena said, her voice steady despite the tears prickling her eyes. I want to know I can trust you again. Sophie's shoulders slumped, but she didn't back away. Then let me prove it. Let me show you I mean it. Elena didn't respond right away. She turned back to the window, watching the rain carve paths down the glass. Her heart ached with the weight of Sophie's confession, but it also burned with the need for something more, something real. Stay, Elena said finally, her voice barely audible. Not because I forgive you, but because I need to understand. I need to know if this is worth fighting for. Sophie's eyes softened, a flicker of hope breaking through the guilt. I'll stay, she said. As long as you'll let me. They stood there, the rain a soft symphony around them. Two women caught in a fragile moment that could either be the start of something new or the end of everything they'd built. Elena didn't know which it would be. But for the first time in months, she felt a spark of possibility, a chance to reclaim the love she'd almost lost. The next few days were a delicate dance of hope and hesitation. Elena let Sophie stay. Not in her apartment but in her life. Agreeing to meet daily at their old Haunted Cozy coffee shop in Capitol Hill where they'd spent countless hours in college. The familiarity of the place with its mismatched chairs and the hum of espresso machines felt like a neutral ground, a space where they could rebuild or let go. Elena arrived first, her sketchbook open on the table, her pencil sketching half-formed ideas for a client's poster. She was 28, but the weight of the past week made her feel older, wiser, and more guarded. Sophie's confession had cracked open her heart, but the pieces were still jagged, unready to fit back together. Sophie walked in, her camera slung over her shoulder, her leather jacket traded for a soft flannel that made her look younger, less guarded. Hey, she said, sliding into the seat across from Elena. Her smile was tentative, like she was testing the waters. Hey, Elena replied, closing her sketchbook. She wanted to keep things light, but the weight of their last conversation lingered. You're early for once. Sophie laughed, a sound that used to make Elena's heart flutter. Now it stirred a mix of warmth and caution. I'm trying to be better, Sophie said, her eyes earnest. Starting with showing up on time. Elena nodded, sipping her latte. It's a start. They talked about small things at first: work, music, the way Seattle's autumn chill was settling in. But the undercurrent of their history pulled them back to the hard truths. Sophie leaned forward, her voice low. I talked to my mom yesterday. She's stable now, but the bills are still a mess. I'm picking up extra gigs to cover what I owe you. Elena's fingers tightened around her mug. I appreciate that. But it's not just about the money, Sophie. You know that. Sophie's gaze dropped to the table, her fingers tracing the grain of the wood. I know. I hurt you and I hate myself for it. I keep replaying that call, wishing I could take it back. Then why say it? Elena's voice was soft but pointed. Why use my feelings against me? Sophie's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Elena thought she might shut down. But then Sophie looked up, her eyes raw. Because I was ashamed. Not of you, me. I've spent years pretending I don't feel what I feel for you. Calling you too lesbian was my way of pushing you away before you could see how much I'm falling apart. Elena's breath caught. She wanted to reach across the table to touch Sophie's hand, but she held back. You don't get to decide what I can handle, she said. If you love me, you have to let me in. All the way. Sophie nodded, her eyes glistening. I'm trying. I've never been good at this, being vulnerable. But I want to be for you. The sincerity in her voice chipped away at Elena's defenses. She saw the Sophie she'd fallen for, the one who'd stayed up all night editing photos with her, who'd danced with her in the rain at a music festival, who'd made her feel like the world was theirs. But she also saw the Sophie who'd lied, who'd lashed out, who'd kept her at arm's length. Let's take it slow, Elena said finally. No more secrets. No more running. Sophie's face lit up, a small but genuine smile breaking through. No more running, she agreed. Over the next week, they fell into a rhythm. Coffee shop meetings turned into walks through the city, their conversations deepening with each step. Sophie shared more about her mother's illness, the crushing weight of medical debt, and her own struggles to keep her photography business afloat. Elena opened up about her fears of being too much, of loving someone who might never fully love her back. One evening, as they stood on a pier overlooking Puget Sound, the sunset painting the sky in hues of pink and orange, Sophie reached for Elena's hand. The touch was tentative, but it sent a jolt through Elena's body. Is this okay? Sophie asked, her voice barely audible over the waves. Elena looked at their joined hands, then at Sophie's face, illuminated by the fading light. It's more than okay, she said, her voice thick with emotion. For the first time in months, Elena felt a flicker of trust return. It wasn't whole, not yet, but it was enough to keep her moving forward, to keep her hoping that love could be stronger than betrayal. Weeks passed and the fragile bridge between Elena and Sophie grew stronger, built on late-night talks and small, deliberate acts of honesty. Sophie kept her promise, picking up extra photography gigs and sending Elena payments whenever she could. Each deposit $500 here, $300 there came with a text. I'm trying. Thank you for giving me a chance. Elena didn't need the money as much as she needed the effort, the proof that Sophie was fighting for her. But trust was a slow burn, and Elena couldn't shake the lingering doubt. Sophie's confession of love had been a seismic shift, but words alone couldn't erase the hurt. Elena found herself watching Sophie closely, searching for signs of the old evasiveness. Yet Sophie was different now, more open, more present. She showed up with coffee on mornings when Elena was swamped with deadlines, left handwritten notes on Elena's sketches, and shared her fears without holding back. One rainy afternoon they ended up at a small art gallery in Pioneer Square, a place they used to visit in college. The walls were lined with vibrant paintings, and the air smelled of old wood and possibility. Sophie lingered by a paisea swirling abstract in blues and greens that reminded Elena of the ocean. This is you, Sophie said, her voice soft. All these colors, all this depth. You make the world more beautiful, Elena. Elena's cheeks warmed, but she didn't look away. You're getting sappy, she teased, though her heart raced. Sophie grinned, her eyes sparkling. Maybe. But I mean it. She hesitated, then added, I want to be part of your world, Elena. Not just as your friend. More. The words hung between them, heavy with promise. Elena's breath caught, and for a moment, she let herself imagine a life where they were more than friends, where love wasn't shadowed by doubt. But the memory of Sophie's betrayal still lingered, a quiet warning in the back of her mind. I want that too, Elena said, her voice steady. But I need time. I need to know this is real. Sophie nodded, her expression a mix of hope and determination. I'll wait. As long as it takes. That night, Elena invited Sophie to her apartment for dinner, a step toward letting her back in. They cooked together, bumping into each other in the small kitchen, laughing over spilled sauce and burnt garlic bread. It felt like old times, but better charged with a new kind of intimacy. As they sat on the couch sharing a bottle of wine, Sophie reached for Elena's hand. I've been thinking, she said, her voice low, about why I pushed you away. It wasn't just about the money or my mom. It was about me not knowing how to love you the way you deserve. Elena's heart ached at the vulnerability in Sophie's voice. You don't have to be perfect, she said. You just have to be honest. Sophie's thumb traced circles on Elena's hand, a small gesture that felt monumental. I'm trying. And I'm not going anywhere. They sat in silence, the rain tapping against the windows, their hands intertwined. Elena felt the weight of the past easing, replaced by a cautious hope. She didn't know if she could fully trust Sophie yet, but she wanted to try. The next day, Sophie showed up with a surprise small photo album filled with pictures of them over the years. Elena flipped through it, her eyes misting at the memories. Their first road trip to Portland, dancing at a concert in the rain, stealing bites of each other's ice cream at the beach. "I made this for you," Sophie said, her voice soft, "to remind you that you've always been my home, even when I was too scared to admit it." Elena's throat tightened. She set the album down and pulled Sophie into a hug, feeling the warmth of her body, the steady beat of her heart. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. As they held each other, Elena realized that love wasn't about perfection, it was about showing up, even when it was messy, even when it hurt. And for the first time she believed Sophie was truly showing up. Winter settled over Seattle, blanketing the city in a quiet chill. Elena and Sophie had spent months rebuilding, their relationship evolving into something deeper, more honest. Sophie had paid back nearly all the money, each payment a small step toward trust. But more than the money, it was the moments, the quiet walks, the shared laughter, the way Sophie's hand found hers in crowded rooms that made Elena believe in them again. One evening they sat in Elena's apartment, a fire crackling in the small fireplace. Sophie was sprawled on the couch, her head resting on Elena's lap as Elena sketched. The silence was comfortable, the kind that spoke of trust rebuilt and love rediscovered. "I got a big gig," Sophie said suddenly, her voice bright. "A wedding shoot next month. It'll cover the last of what I owe you." Elena smiled, setting her sketchbook aside. "You don't have to keep proving yourself, you know. I see you trying." Sophie sat up, her dark eyes serious. "I want to. Not just for the money but for us. I want you to know I'm all in." Elena's heart swelled. She reached for Sophie's hand, their fingers intertwining. "I know," she said softly. "And I'm all in too." Sophie's face softened and she leaned in, her lips brushing Elena's in a kiss that was both tender and electric. It was their first real kiss, a moment that felt like the culmination of years of longing. Elena's hands found Sophie's face, pulling her closer, the world fading to just the two of them. When they pulled apart, Sophie's eyes were bright with tears. "I don't deserve you," she whispered, "but I'm going to spend every day trying to." Elena smiled, her own eyes misty. "You don't have to deserve me, Sophie. Just love me." "I do," Sophie said, her voice fierce. "I always have." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of new beginnings. They went on dates, real dates, with candlelit dinners and walks under the stars. They talked about the future, about building a life together, about facing their fears head-on. Elena felt herself opening up, her heart no longer guarded but hopeful, ready to embrace what they could be. One night, as they stood on a rooftop overlooking the city, Sophie pulled Elena close. "I was so scared of losing you," she said, her voice barely audible over the wind. "But I'm not scared anymore. I want Thysis for as long as you'll have me." Elena's heart soared. She looked into Sophie's eyes, seeing the woman she'd loved for years, the woman who'd hurt her but had fought to make it right. "Forever," she said, her voice steady. "I want us forever." They kissed again, the city lights sparkling below, a testament to the love they'd rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, a love that had weathered lies, pain, and fear, emerging stronger for it. In the end, Elena realized that love wasn't about never breaking, it was about choosing to mend, to show up, to fight for each other. And as she stood with Sophie, their hands clasped, she knew they'd keep choosing each other, no matter what storms came their way. Their story wasn't just about money or betrayal. It was about two women finding their way to a love that was messy, beautiful, and profoundly human. It was about forgiveness, not just of each other but of themselves, and the courage to build something new from the pieces of what was broken. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.